Alright, so welcome back to this other session of our series that we started concerning with Filament PHP version 4. So here we are going to discuss about how you can manage the listing of your Filament resources. Okay, so here you can see on this listing record page, you have a way to define the tabs, and these tabs will help you to filter your records. So this is the simplest way you can define your tabs in your resources. But before we go forward, here we only defined the 3 resources, but if you remember on your models here, we had the other models for purchase order, stock movement, and users. So we need to define also for those other models. So what we are going to do is just to create the remaining resources. So I'm just going to run php @ make, then filament resource. Then as we discussed, so you need to pass the name of the model. But if you don't pass it, Filament will ask you for that. But for now, let me just pass the model name, which is purchase order. Okay, and then we are going to say it should generate, and we want to generate also the view page. Okay, so let's run that command. So here you'll be asked for the title attribute of this model. So what you need to do is just to see the order, the field that you want to use it as the attribute that you can use to filter this on a global search. So I'm going to use this order number. Okay, and then I'll press enter. Okay, so you can see the resource was generated successfully. So now let's go to the view and see if that resource was generated here. Yeah, so here you can see we have the purchase orders. So now we can open it, and you see inside it we have this purchase order. So you can see, yeah, so we just need to perform some of the changes actually for these relationships. So we just need to update those relationships. So let's go to the filament purchase orders, and then let's go to the table, and we need to reference these relationships because here it is supplier. So we need just to say supplier, then dot notation, then the name of the supplier. For the user also we need to reference for the user. So just to check on purchase order and see how we define the user. So it's just a user. So we are just going to use user, then name, and after that, if you go back here and refresh, now it should be good, right? So here you can see the name of the supplier, and also you can see the name of the user that created this order, or the user that ordered that order. Let's go to the edit form and see how it looks like. So also here we need to change these to be using the select fields. So let's go to the schema, then the form. So in here we need to change this one to select. Okay, and then after that we need to remove this one because now it is not a numeric field again, similar way to this one. After that, now let's pass the relationship function, and then let's define the relationship to the supplier. Then the title attribute will be the name of the supplier. So that will be the name that will be shown when you visit this page, this field. And then we should make sure that it is searchable, as I've explained on my previous video. And we need to say it should be preloaded. So let's call preload, and now the same thing for this field of user. So this should be user, and the name will remain name, and make sure this is the selected field. Yeah, so now we should be good. So now let's go back to the view, refresh. Yeah, so here you can see the supplier and the user. So you can be able to search and you can be able to select those values. So for the status, we are just going to use one of the field that I'm going to show you here. So instead of using this one, we are going to use a field called the to-go buttons. So this field, you will find it here on the Filament documentation. So just visit the forms, then you will see the field called the to-go buttons. So open it like this one. Yeah, so it is defined like this one. So you can just pass it, and then you need to define the options. So on options, here let's have the options like this one, but we need to define those options basing on our model. I mean on our database, how we define them. So let's see from the database here. So purchase, this is our purchase. So on the status, we have the pending, ordered, received, and the cancelled. So here we need to say pending, ordered, received, and cancelled. Okay, now let's define the display text. So this should be cancelled, this should be received, this should be ordered, and this should be pending. Okay, so after that, now if you go back here and try to visit again the form, you should see the will be in a vertical way. So if you want to group them, you can just pass the function called the grouped. So you can just say grouped, and when you refresh, you should see them grouped in a row. You see, so this is how they will be grouped. And you can also perform more or further changes or further customization basing on this documentation here. So for example, you can change the color. So this is how you can change the color. So basing on the value, you can change the color. So let's say, for example, you want to say, let's say on a pending, you want to make it to be, let's say, secondary. On ordered, you want to make it to be, let's say info, and then on received, we need to use the success, and on cancelled, it can be danger. Okay, so now let's go back and see how it looks like. So now you see, if we go to ordered, you can see the color is changing. On received, you see it is green, and on cancelled, you see it is red. So that's how easy you can just perform those changes. But there is more things that you can do. You can add the icons here. For example, you can use this to add the icons, and it will just work as expected. So it will be shown as that way. Okay, but if the values are Boolean, so you can just pass the Boolean. So you can just say, for example, you can pass Boolean, and you will see something like this. Okay, there is other options that you can add. For example, if you want to add the options in this way, so you can just say the inline, which is actually applicable even on option here. So instead of saying grouped, you can use the inline. Okay, and if you put the inline there and try to refresh again, you see, so they will be just scattered. So this will not be attached to any of these ones. Okay, so you can just do that. Grouped is this one that I have shown you. multiple selection, you just need to say the user can select more than one value. But also you can split the options. So for example, you can use this way to split the options. So just pass these columns and then you define the number of columns that you want to use. But also you can use the grid if you want. So you can just say the grid direction and the number of columns that you need to use. But also you can use this disabling specific options. So for example, you can see here on the published, you can make this to be disabled. It means the user will not be able to change if it is published. Okay, so that's all concerning with the toggle buttons. So whenever we'll be using this one, I'll assume already we've passed it through this one, so that will not be so that we can not be repeating the same thing. So here I'll just return it to grouped because I feel this works fine. So I'll just return it to grouped, yeah, like that one. Okay, and now here we have the dates. So this is the date. We have this way the total amount. This will be auto calculated. Later on I'll show you how we are going to attach here the purchase order items, and then from the purchase order items, whenever you are changing something and when you save it, it should be populated as values here. So for now, this just leave it that way. So let's continue with the other things. So on view page, let's see how it looks like. So you can see also here we need to perform the changes concerning with the supply ID and user ID. So let's go to the info list, which is this one, and let's change that to supplier, then the name, similar way to the user ID, yeah, that way. And if you refresh again, now you should be able to see the names. Okay, so that's cool. Now let's go to the other resource that is supposed to be created. So now we need to create another one for stock movement. We don't create the one for purchase order item because this will be related to this one. So we are going to use the nested or the manage relationships. So I'll show you that in a minute. But for now, let's go to this one and then we are going to finish with the user. Okay. So now let's go back here on our terminal. Let's rerun this command, but now it will be for stock movement. Stock movement. Okay, now let's generate. So on stock movement, the field that we are going to use it on a global search. Let's see from here. Actually, yeah, it's not a math thing, so we can just leave it that way. And the last one will be for user. Okay. So here we should put the username. Okay. So now we have the two new resources. So if we refresh, you see, so we have the stock movement, which is this one, and we have the user resource. Okay. So you can see these are the three ones that we added. So we need to change the icons and perform other configurations based on what we are doing. So for example, on this one, on users, actually it's good because we can just edit. But here on password, this will be giving you some errors because it will be requiring you to, for example, here we are editing. So if you try to save, you see the password will be required. So what you can do, you can make this to be let's say not required on edit operations, because lastly I remember I showed you how to do that. So what we are going to do is just to go to the stock movement form here, I mean on user form, and on password. So we are going to say, let's say required so here we are going to say, because here we need to have the condition, so what we can do, we can just pass the callback function. So we can just say function, And then what we can do, we can just say we are going to pass the string here. Then we are going to say operation, and then you can see, so when the operation will be edit, so we are going to make it to be actually on create, so that's when we are going to make it to be required. But when it will be on edit, this will not be required. So if I go back here and refresh, yeah, so still it is not working. Let's see. So required, make it to be boolean. Okay, now let's add another method here, which is called the dehydrated, and then we are going to pass the function, which we're going to say this string can be null, and then we are going to say it will pass the state. So it will be a boolean, and then we are going to say it will be filled state. Okay, and then after that, now let's define another function, which we are going to say dehydrated state using. Then we are just going to encrypt our field, our password. So this will be string state. Then we are going to say the string will be the #d. Okay, so here means we are going to pass the state, and then that state will be encrypted, because that state means will be the state of this password. So we are going to dehydrate it. So when we are saying dehydrating means when the state will be changing, we want to refill this field with this data, and then we are going to hash it. And when you hash it or you encrypt it, means it will be saved on database, and it will be saved automatically. So after that, now let's remove this required field, and now we should be good. But the other thing that you can add the revealable function, which means it will be showing the eye icon, which will be able to toggle between those two. So for example, now if I refresh, you see, so this is not a required on edit, but if you go on create, that should be required. So you see, so on create it is required, and if you try to submit, so this will be required, but if it is on edit, it should not be required. Okay, so you see, so now we can be able to save, and everything will be working just fine. See, so you see the data has been saved. So that's all concerning with the user. So for now I can just leave it that way, but the other thing will be updating as we goes on. But now let's go to the stock movement, and from the stock movement, let's see on our form how it looks like. So you can see here we have the product ID and the user ID. So we need to add the relationships there. So let's update those two. So on the stock movement on this form, now let's update this one to be a select field. Import that select like that one. It is a component coming from the filament forms, and the similar way to this user ID. And let's add the things that we added before, so we should not make it to be numeric. Make it define the relationship on the product, and then make it to be searchable. and also make it to be preloaded. Okay, so after that, now let's copy those changes and let's update this one with the user relationship. You need to make sure that the relationship that you passed there is the same relationship that is defined here, so you have to be checking those. Okay, so after that, now let's see how it looks like on our view. Refresh. Now you should be able to see the product here, so you can see these are the products, and for the users you can see these are the users. But the one of the things that I find it to be usable or very useful is when you are dealing with users, because we assume the user that has been logged in to the system is the one who is performing a certain action. So there is no need for that user to be able to select this field. So it should select automatically, and this field should be disabled automatically. So what you can do, you can just use the default function, and you can just say it should use the authorized user. So means will be the user that has been logged in. So for example, if I go back here and refresh, now you see it selected that user automatically. But the other way around is just to prevent the user to be able to edit this function, I mean this field. So now it should be this way. Okay, so you see, user will not be able to edit. Right, but this will give you one error, because now this field will not be saved on your database. So to make it to be saved, you can just apply again the function called dehydrate. So you can just say dehydrated, then you can say true, because if you leave it this way, it will be true by default, because you see, so the default value will be true. So you can pass it or leave it that way, because this will help you to save this field even if you have disabled it. Okay, so that is how easy you can just do that. And now let's see here on type. On this type, we need to define the type of stock movement, because on stock movement we have two types of movement. So we have the in and out, so we need to make sure that the form will handle that. So here I'm going to use again the to go buttons. So we are going to have the options, and then let's say we need to have the colors. Yeah, so that way, and we need to make sure that these are grouped. Okay, so now if I refresh again, now you should see, so we have the stock in and the stock out. Okay, so that works just fine. Okay, so now the quantity should be that way, the new stock and the previous stock, so all of these will be working just fine. Okay, also the reason, this should be basically a text editor, I mean the text area, so we need to make sure this is text area too. Yeah, so this way, and you can just change the rows of these text areas. So you can define the rows, and you can say, let's say for example 3 rows. You see, so you can just change the number of rows if you want. So you can put, let's say 5. Yeah, so you can see, so that's how easy you can just do those. Okay, and now this, let's say for example for the movement date, you can put here the default date. So you can say, let's say this is defaulted to now. Now let's go back and try to refresh. See, so it will be taking the current time that the user will be editing this form. Okay, but if the user want to change it, they are able to update, because it takes with the time too, so that the user can be able to update those. And when we perform this functionality, I'll show you how we are going to to save this data and how they are going to affect the current stock of our user, okay, I mean of our product. So currently, because we are going to see on how we are going to manage the create and edit records, so it is a good idea for now, let's just stick to this listing, and then when we reach the creating, that's when I'll show you how this works, okay? So for now, let's visit this page, and here you can see we have a way to define the tabs, and these tabs, as I've mentioned, will be used to filter the records based on the predefined conditions. So each tab can scope the Eloquent query for the table in a different way. So to register those tabs, is we are going to use this method called the get tabs. So let me just copy it, and let's go to the product. So let's go to the resources, products, then on our listing page. So listing page is this one. So here, let's paste that method and import the tabs. Okay, import this builder, and you have to make sure that the builder is database Eloquent builder. So this one, make sure that when you are importing it, use the right one. And here, if you see, we have the all, active, and inactive items. But here, you need to make sure that the column that you pass here, because here you are just going to modify the query by using this query parameter that you pass here. So this field, make sure is similar with the field that you have in your database. So on the product table, we have the is active, not just the active. So you need to change this one to is active, and here is active, okay? And you can see from here it is a Boolean field, so it should work as expected, because now if visitor change this one, let's say from all to active, it should modify our query and pass this parameter or constraint, and this constraint will filter our data based on their status, okay? So now if we go back to the page and visit the items page, now we should be able to see the tabs on our listing page. See? So this is actually good, and it looks very fine. So now if you go to the active, you see the data being filtered, and you can see this is active. If I go to the inactive, you see I see only the inactive item. So we go to active, you see all, and you see, so that's good, and it works just fine. Out of that, you can add other things like icons. You can customize the filters if you want to customize the labels of those filters. For example, instead of just saying active and inactive, you can say active items, inactive items, or name them whenever, whatever you like. Also, you can customize the icons. You can use, let's say, the badges if you want to count how many active items are. So you can just use this badge, for example, and just place it wherever you want. For example, here, and make sure that you use the correct model. So this should be product. See? So now if I go back here and refresh, see? So it shows that the active is 0, because this should be is active, not just active, is active. So refresh. Now you see, so we have 1 here, which is this one. But if all the tools will be active, so you should be able to see the counting down here on our badge, okay? So now that's fine. On our listing, I guess other things will be just extra thing that you can do. But for now, let's go direct to the create record, because this one is a little bit important, and it has got some of the things that I want to show you, which is very critical and very important, okay? So the first thing that you should see here is how you're going to customize the data before you save it. For example, when you are creating a stock movement from here, for example, let me just show you. Let's say you don't want the user to be able to see this field at all, okay? So remember, on your database, this field is required. So if you don't want the user to be able to see this field at all, means behind the scene you should be able to fetch all the ID of the logged in user and assign it to this data when you are saving it. So that comes this way of customizing the data before you save it. So you just capture the ID of the logged in user, and then you assign it to the field that you are supposed to save it, and then when you return that data, means that data will be saved correctly into your database. So we are going to use this method called mutate form data before create, which actually it accepts an array of data, which is actually just the same thing as this handle record creation, but this, it handles this process when you are creating data. So these are two different states, or two different things when you are performing data manipulation. So this is before saving, but this is when you are saving, okay? So you can use either of these, but it depends on when you want to perform that function exactly. Because when you want to perform when you are not saving the data, this is the right one, but when you are saving, is this one that should be applied, okay? So for now, I can just show you by removing that field from here on stock movement. For example, I can remove this one. Okay, so let me just go back here, and this field, for example, I can just hide it, and when I hide it and go back here, we should not see that field here. You see? So that's good. But now if let's say we populate sample data here, okay, for example, let's say select a certain product and let's save it, we should see an error here because on our database the user ID is required, and here we are not passing any user ID. You see? So it says the query exception means the user ID is required, okay? So it does not have a null value on that field, okay? So what you can do is just choose either this one or this one. Both of them will work just fine because this is just a simplest demonstration. But if you want to perform other things that are very complicated, it is a good idea to study it clearly and understand if you want to use this one or this one, okay? So for now, I'll just use both of them at a time and show you how they do. So let's go to the create stock movement, which is our page. Remember here we are on create stock movement page, you see? So we are on creating record. So this is the page. So you need to navigate to the create stock movement, or any page that or another resource that you are using. Just go to the pages and visit the create page, okay? So let me just paste it here, and when I paste it here, means it will fetch the user ID of the logged in user and it will assign it on this particular field. So this field will be assigned to this data, and this data will be the data that will be required by the resource to be saved, okay? So this is an array that will be saved on your database. So for now, if I go back to here and try to save, now we should be good, you see? So the data was saved and you can see the user ID is 1. So if I try to create another one, and instead of using this method, I can just use the handle method. So I can use this one, see? So instead of that, I can just use this one, and you need to make sure that you import this model, so this one. And the thing that will change here is like this way. So you need to define this value, which is the key that is found on this array, which is coming from this method as a parameter, and then you assign it the user ID of the logged in user, and then this data will be the data that is going to be used to create the values. So this is when the data are being created into your database. So the resource uses this method called the handle record creation, which accepts the array of data. So that's how easy you can just do that. And now if we go back here and try to create another one, and if we put that and then select the product and save, see, so it is saving as we expected. So that is the essence of these two methods, but there is more that you can use. But for creating this, I believe will be very useful when you don't want to show the fields on your users forms like this one. Okay, so for now, basically we can just continue with the other thing. So for example, down here there is a way of customizing the redirection, because now when you create data, it is redirecting you to this edit page. But let's say when you create the data, you want to redirect to the index page, which is this one, instead of redirecting to the edit page. So you can just do that by using this method called the get redirect URL, and then you are going to pass the URL of the page that you want to redirect your data. So for example, here I can just pass it down here, and I want to redirect to the index. Why index? Because if you go back to the resource here, down here there is this method called the get pages, and on this get pages you see we have the index, which references the listing. We have the create, which references the create, view for view, edit for edit. So when you say index, means here it will direct you to this particular page. Okay, so that's how easy you can just use this way of redirection. So for now, if I go back here and create a new stock movement, basically we are just doing this, but the stock will not be changing on our item. Why? Because we didn't perform the functionality of stock movement. So I'll show you that later on, but for now let's just try this one, and then let's apply just for any of these items, and then create, and you see it has redirected us to the listing page instead of redirecting us to the edit page or view page. Okay, so you can just do anything that you want, and it will respond to your changes. And here you need to update the stock movement table, because you see the product ID and user ID, so you need to change those. Okay, so for example, on table, okay, now the other thing that I want to show is how you can actually customize the save notification, because right now if you try to save or edit or create a new data, the notification that you see, it will be only saved. But let's say you want to update that, so the simplest way is to use this method called the get created notification title, so which you can also use it inside the create page. So you can go back to the create page like this one, and down here you can just paste it here and just update the notification based on what you are doing, because now we are dealing with the stock movement. So you can just say stock movement created successful. So this will be for created, and this is an alternative, and so you can just do that. And if you want to use this way, you can also perform by using this way, because this one is the first way, this is the second way. But if you don't want to show any notification, you can just return a null value. Okay, so that means if now we try to save, yeah, this is on edit, but if you go to the create, now the notification should change. For example, now we try to save this one. See, so stock movement created is successful. So we've customized the notification is successful, so that will be good. So let's update these two fields quickly. So let's go to the table. So this should be product name, and this should be user name, right? Okay, so now let's refresh again. Yeah, so you see, and now on this type you can use the badge, because we want to make the table looks a little bit nice. So, and you can change the colors based on the value. So what you can do, you can say colors, and you can say if it is in, means it should be success, and if it is out, it should be danger. So now let's refresh. Okay, so that does not work. Now let's flip this one. So let's say success, then this should be in, and here out, and here it should be danger. Now let's try again. Yeah, so now you see it works just as we expected it. So any in means stock movement, which is stock in, it should be green, and when it is in stock out, it should be red. So that's good, and now it looks very fine. Okay, but also you can control the limitation of this reason. So you can just say it should be limited to, let's say, 50 characters. Okay, so means if we will have this field have more than those characters number, so it will be trimmed automatically. So now we have this stock movement working fine. So now let's go back here, but before we go back, let's see other things that I wanted to show you. But here only we have a way to control the create another, because now if you see here, or let me just use the user's resource. So for example, if you come here, you see there is this option called create and create another. So the user can be able to, let's say, create a new user like this one, and then when you click create and create another, means it will save that user and it will create a new form that will be cleared all of these fields, so that you can be able to create another user. Because if you click this one, it will direct you to the edit page, but if you click this one like this way, you see, so it has been created, and you see the field is now empty, and you can create another user. So that is the create and create another function. But if you want to disable that one, this is the simplest way you can do it. So you can just use that inside your resource. So let's go to the resource here, and up here just paste that attribute, and now let me go back here and let me refresh. You see, okay, this should be on a create page, not here. It should be on create page here. Okay, now let's refresh again. See, so it has been gone. So now you can not create and create another value. So that is the way that you can use this one. And an alternative way is to use this method, can create another. So you just put it to false, so because it will return a boolean value. Okay, but also there is other things that are most important, because you can just use these lifecycle hooks, like before create. There is more, like before fill, after fill, before validate, after validate, before create, after create. All of these are important on one way or another, so you will find them useful when you are doing more about this Laravel thing. So another thing that you can find useful is how you can halt the creation process. For example, for this is the case that you can see, let's say you are checking if the user has subscribed, or the team of that user has subscribed to a certain, let's say, subscription on your system. So if they are not, means this is not true, means you should show this notification. And when you show this notification, it means you should call the halt method. This halt method will stop the creation of the data, means all the data that you have filled on this form will not be saved into database. So it will stop, and then it will show the user the notification that let's say they have to subscribe, so that they can be able, let's say, to add a new user. So that is the simplest way that I can show you, but I'll not show you it in action. But the thing that I wanted to show you in action is how you are going to use the wizard or the step forms. So multi-step forms, if you have heard it before. So this is the thing that we are going to show you now. So here, the thing that you can use is to define this method called get steps, and you should return this array. So let me just copy it, and let's use it here. For example, I can use it on your create stock movement, or I can just use it in a product. I want to use it in a product so that we can see it in action here. And then you need to pass the following. So you need to have these steps. So let's say you make the step and you give it a name, you give it a description, and it should have the scheme. Okay, so let me just use this one. You need to have the step and close that step this way and import it like that one, and now you should be able to start. Now on our product, as you see before we added the step, means on our product, on items, we have the name. So let's say I want to put the name SKU, let's say, and category on the first step. So here, let's say we need to put those fields. So we are going just to copy them from here. So I'm just going to say this one up to description. I'm going to use them here. So let me just import them like that one, and this one also on this one. Okay. Yeah. After that, now step number 2. Let's say I want to define a step number 2. So this change it, let's say, okay, that way, and the step number 2. Yeah, let me just use that one. So means the category ID, the supply IDs, purchase price, and the selling price should be on details. So let me import that one. Okay, and after that we have remained with the stock, means the minimum stock unit, and the other fields we can put them on the last step. So let me just put them on the last step. So let me just say current the minimum unit, and then the other step will be for media and the status. So this will be for the file upload and for the status, and then we can close it. Okay, so if you visit this page, it is the same thing that we did here. Okay, so you can see it's the same thing, but we have just put them inside these steps. So we have the first step, which is for the name, so you can just name it that way. So you can say, let's say, the initial informations, and then you have the details where you define the category, supplier, purchase price, and selling price. Then we have the inventory where we control the current, minimum, unit, and pieces, also with this barcode if you use it. And then we have the media and the status where you can upload the image of that particular item or product. And then we have the status. So now we need to see it in action, how it will look like. So after defining this, now you can go back here and let's test to create a new product. So let me refresh, and now let's create a new product. Okay, so this does not work. So what you can do, so okay, there is one thing that we left. So here on the create page, you are supposed to add one of the concerns. So let me just show you how to add it. So there is this thing. So you see, you on this page class add the corresponding has wizard trait, which is this one. So you need to make sure that you use this one. So let me just import it here and make sure that if you just put that way, means it will be referenced automatically. So now if we go back to the page on our create, so currently it was using this one, but if I refresh again, now you see we have these steps. So you see now we have the first step, which is initial info. We have the details, inventory, and media and status. And here you can see we have the name and description. Okay, so you can style them as you want, because now they are using the full column or the full width, you can see. So you can just make them to look at the way that you want. For example, if you say, let's say columns, and say they use 2 columns, and if you refresh, now you see, so this is how they looks like. Okay, so for example, now I can define a product here. So I can say, let's say product 1, can put some description. Okay, and then I can go to the next step where you see I'm in details, and you can see here I can select the category, supplier, the purchasing price, let's say that amount, but you can add the let's say the currency if you want, as I've shown you on using this one. So for example, here on purchase price, I didn't show you, but let me just show you here. So what you can do, you can just say money. No, you can use the prefix actually. Prefix, and then you can say, let's say this is in dollar. So you can just use the same way to this one. Okay, so it should be able to see. So let me just go back and we'll go forward. So now you see we have something like this, and the selling price, let's say it is that one. Okay, now let's go to the next step, and you see the current stock, let's say it is 0, the minimum stock is 5, and let's say the pieces is this one, and we don't have that barcode currently. And let's say you want to upload an image, so let me just upload any of these. Okay, so that is fine. Now let's make it to be active, and then create. Now we should be able to create the data, and we have been redirected to this page of view of our product, where we need to also update these two. So let's go to the info list, and then let's update this one to category name, and here supplier name. Okay, fresh. Yeah, so now it looks fine. See the selling price, and this one maybe we should use the prefix again. Okay, so now let's refresh again. Yeah, so now it looks fine. So this is a product that we have created by using the step form. But if you go to the edit, here you don't have the step forms, so here it will use just the normal form that you had before. Okay, so this is how it looks like currently. So now everything works as we expected. So that was for the multi-step forms or the wizard. The other thing that I wanted you to show is here you can add the let's say the custom actions on your forms or the page or on the create page actually. So for example, you can use this get header action and you can use that, let's say, on your page. For example, you want to add the action like this one. So let's say on create product, I mean, let's use it on user, for example. So let's go to the form. I mean on the create page, and from here let me just say let me just define the action, and here I'll say the name of the action will be, let's say, disable product, let's say user. Okay, and then you are supposed to define the action, you see. So you can just define this functionality, but for now let me just go back here and let's go to the users and let's go to the new user, and here you see this action, but now it does not perform anything, but I've just to show you how you can add it. So if you perform the logic here for, let's say, disabling a user or doing anything, so that will be able to perform that functionality automatically. So I'll just remove it from here, and now I guess all of the things that were important on this creating record page, we've already discussed all of them. Other things are just additional that you can go through it on your own. But for the next video, I'll be discussing on how you can visit this editing record and how you can perform these important things. We are going to see also the viewing and also the deleting. And then after that is where we are going to start to look on managing relationships and also the nested resources. After that, we are just going to finishing up with these things, which are very easy. So we can just do that very quickly. Then we can be able to start to look on other things here. But all of these, as I've mentioned before, when we are discussing about these things, we were also touching some of the things from here. So it will just be easier to perform everything. And at the end of this series, you will have a complete working inventory management application that you have created by using FilamentPHP version 4. So the intention is just to you to be able to use the Filament version 4 and create a real-world application. So thank you for watching. See you on the next video.